Here I'm going to do example 3 from section 1.4. I'll start by reading at least part of the problem and then we'll dig into it a little bit. One of the tables below represents a supply curve, the other represents a demand curve. Part A, which table represents which curve and why? And then in part B, we'll talk about reading the tables with a price of 155 and we'll go on from there. But let me start with part A. Okay, so the main thing to look at when you're comparing supply and demand is with supply, price and quantity rise together. So if the price is higher, the suppliers are more willing to make more, manufacture more, supply more of whatever that quantity is. And then in a demand curve, they go in opposite directions. So that if the price is higher, then the consumers are going to buy less or demand less. So they go in opposite directions, higher price, lower demand. So you should just be able to look then at the beginning and the end of each of these tables. And for table 1, when the price is 182, the quantity is 5. And when the price goes down to 118, the quantity goes up to 35. So the price is going down as the quantity goes up. And that's the demand curve. So part A, 1 equals demand. And again, if the price is high, the demand is relatively low. Fewer people are buying it. So as soon as you figure that out, of course, the second table is automatically set. Table 2 is equal to supply, but I will explain it again in case you went about it in the other order. In table 2, the price starts at 6, goes up to 36, and at the same time, together, the quantity starts low and goes up with the price. So the suppliers, when the price is high, are more willing to make more or supply more of whatever the item is. So again, part 2 or table 2 is supply. Okay, part B. At a price of $155, how many items would consumers purchase? So consumers purchase, that is talking about buying, that's talking about the demand side. So we look at table 1. And at table 1, it's pretty easy. We should be looking for our price of 155. And it's not listed exactly on the table, so we'll be reading between some values. It looks like maybe 155 would be right there between 153 and 167. And so again, right there for the quantity would be somewhere between 10 and 15. I'll say about 14. Okay, part C is just reversing that. We're going to be talking about, it says at a price of 155, approximately how many items would manufacturers supply. So of course that's asking about supply, manufacturers. And so we look at table 2. Again, 155 is not exactly listed. It would be somewhere between 110 and 166, maybe a little bit closer to the 166. And so we would look between 20 and 25, maybe a little bit closer to the 25. I'll say that we look at table 2, and I'll pick a number in between. I'll say about 23. Okay, part D. Will the market push prices higher or lower than 155? And there's a couple ways to figure out what's going on in this part. There's a general belief, which is often true, maybe usually true, that markets tend to push things towards equilibrium. And so that means they tend to move in the direction where consumers and suppliers are interested in the same price point and the same quantity sold. So they tend to move in that direction. Equilibrium is where the two graphs intersect. So that's one way to kind of think about it. In this case, it's also fairly simple just to look at the quantity involved and compare parts B and C. So in B, we were talking about how many items the consumers purchased, and in C, we talked about how many items were being made or supplied, and you can see that the supply was higher. So the supply was greater than the demand, and that means the manufacturers or the sellers, they have too much stuff. And what do they do when they have too much stuff? Like, what does a bakery do if they made too much bread one day? Or what does a clothing store do if they have too many items, too many pairs of pants around and not enough people are buying them? They have a sale. What is a sale? It means that they lower the price. So in this case, at 155, there's too many things and it'll tend to push the price lower. So market will push the price lower, and the reason is because right now the supply is greater than the demand. Okay, what price would you have to use if you wanted consumers to buy at least 20 items? So again, we look back at the consumer table, that's table 1, and if we want them to buy 20 items, that looks like a price of 143. So we're reading the table backwards in this case. In part B, we started with the price and then read the quantity Q, and now we're starting with the Q and reading backwards to get the price. And in part F, what price would have to be if you wanted manufacturers to supply at least 20 items? So again, supply is table 2. We look at 20 items, and the price would be 110. So again, we're just reading the table backwards. So that's it. It's still not at an equilibrium point. We're not really finding, in this case, where the equilibrium point is. The prices are not equal there. So at an equilibrium point, you'd have the same price and the same value of Q. And it's not quite there either. But they didn't ask for that, so in part F, we're just reading it backwards and 110. And that's the end of the example.